Chapter 5 Christina stuck 2 fingers in her mouth and whistled 3 distinct notes. She had scarcely finished when the magic carpet appeared over the top of the trees. I tried to be careful stepping onto the carpet, but the ash I stirred up made my eyes water. Squeezing them shut, I wiped my eyelids with my handkerchief and held my nose so I wouldn't sneeze again. When I could see, I noticed that Christina had taken her black dragon scale out of the pouch on her belt. "Is everyone ready?" she asked, settling her skirts around her. Edric took my hand and I glanced at his face. He was pale and his lips were pressed in a tight line. Realizing that he might be nervous about flying, I smiled at him in what I hoped was a reassuring manner and gave his hand a squeeze. "You don't have to go. We can drop you off at your parents' castle." Edric shook his head. "I'm going if you are. You need me to keep you safe." "I'll be fine," I began, but from the set of his jaw I knew he wasn't about to change his mind. "We're as ready as we'll ever be," I told Christina. Clutching a small bag of sand and the parchment in one hand, Christina held the scale in the other and said, "Witches who around here sat suddenly decided that they had someplace new to go, as this picture seems to show. Use these things to help us find them. Let no one in secret bind them. Be it near or be it far, show us where these witches are." I peered over my aunt's shoulder to see the scale. A gift to Christina from a dragon friend, the scale was an excellent direction finder, with sparks of light flashing red for hot when aimed in the right direction and blue for cold when aimed in the wrong direction. My legs were beginning to cramp by the time the light flashed. It was blue at first, but my aunt tilted her head, and the rug lifted a few inches off the ground, rotating slowly until the lights turned to red. Christina muttered something under her breath, and the rug rose in the air, its movement smoother than when we had left the castle. Rising above the treetops, the rug swayed in the air currents, settling down only after Christina used a calming spell. The lights sparkled around the scale, but they were faint, a good indication that we had far to travel. Before long, we were moving so fast that we had to squint against the wind. Although I tried to look at the scenery, I soon gave up and closed my eyes, clinging to Edric's hand as the wind buffeted the carpet. I opened my eyes once we had passed the Purple Mountains. I opened them again, and we were flying over a vast plain, where an army marched below us, so far away they looked smaller than ants. When daylight faded into night and the stars came out one by one, I closed my eyes and leaned against Edric. I must have slept, for the next thing I knew it was daylight and we were flying over a body of water that seemed to go on forever. At one point, a group of enormous fish-like creatures passed below us, clearly visible despite the great distance that separated us. I wanted to share the sight with Edric, but when I glanced at him, his face was pale and the skin around his mouth was slightly green. "Are you okay?" I asked. Edric moaned and shook his head, his lips tightly shut as if speaking would be too much effort. I squeezed his hand. A moment later, he leaned toward the edge of the rug and emptied his stomach up into the water below. I felt sorry for him when he finally sat up, pale and shaking, although I was grateful the wind carried the smell away. Most of our trip had been made in good weather, but as the hours passed, the sky grew cloudy and whitecaps topped the waves. Edric moaned more often now, and his hand felt cold and damp. "We need to set down soon," I thought, and I leaned forward to check the scale again. The lights were brighter, the red sparks flashing with such frenzy I knew we were approaching our destination. "Do you know where we are?" I asked, leaning close to my aunt's ear. "I have a good idea. There's an island straight ahead. It's where we're headed if I'm not mistaken. Sit back and hold on tight. Our ride is about to get rough." Despite the spell my aunt used to keep us steady, the carpet was jerking and shuddering as the wind increased. Now Christina took us higher still. The clouds appeared dark and menacing, and I dreaded going through them. When we entered the first cloud, a chill enveloped us that made my breath catch in my throat. I shivered as the cold seeped into my bones. Edric was only a vague shape beside me, though he was so close our hips now touched. The wind grew stronger, lashing us with rain. Looking up as lightning flashed, I saw the otter slipping toward the edge of the rug. "Haywood!" Christina screamed, lunging for him, grabbing a furry paw as he was about to go over. The otter scrambled with his hind paws, dragging himself back onto the rug until he was huddled by my aunt, her arm pressing him to her side. My stomach lurched when the carpet dropped and then shot up again just as quickly. Clutching the carpet's edge on one side and Edric's hand with the other, I was truly frightened for the first time since our journey began. My heart thudded as the rug bucked and swooped. Damp and shivering, I bit my lip, trying not to cry out when I felt tickling begin. Alarmed, I pressed my nose against my shoulder, but it wasn't enough. The tickling became unbearable, and I squeezed Edric's hand in warning. Of course I sneezed. The transformation was almost instantaneous. No longer a gradual tingling, it felt more like a shock that started in my fingers and toes and then coursed through my body until it reached my head, making it feel fizzy and light. When I glanced down, I saw smooth green legs jutting out in front of me. Looking up, I saw Edric's froggy mouth hanging open in dismay. Unable to hold onto the rug with our small fingers, we were helpless against the rushing wind. The next powerful gust blew us off the rug and we fell, tumbling through the air, our intertwined fingers all that kept us together. I screamed, the sound carried away by the wind, as we plummeted through the cloud, head over heels, twisting and turning until I wasn't sure which way was up anymore. When I saw the terror on Edric's face, I realized I was the only one who could save us. With all the wind and the rain, my aunt probably didn't even know we had fallen. The wind tried to tear us apart, but we held on, gripping each other's hand as hard as we could. Flipping over again, I found myself looking at the water as it rushed up to meet us. My eyes were streaming from the wind, but even so, the waves looked far too close to me. I forced myself to concentrate. There had to be something. I tried to remember all the spells I'd read, but none of them seemed appropriate. I had to come up with a spell of my own, but what if some kind of creature could meet us part way and take us to the island? A bird, perhaps. I shouted the spell as I thought of it, although I doubt volume makes much difference when it comes to magic. Winged creature flying near, save us from the death we fear. Catch us now before we land on the water or the sand. I turned my head this way and that, hoping to spot a seabird braving the wind to rescue us. When nothing came, I closed my eyes and squeezed Edric's hand, sorry that I'd gotten him into such a mess. Tumbling through the air, I expected to splat against the water at any moment, so I didn't know what to think when I hit something tough and leathery that gave beneath my body. I became even more confused when I opened my eyes. We had fallen onto a broad black back, hurtling just above an enormous wave. "Hang on!" shouted a voice, but there was nothing to hold on to except the rippling, leathery edge of the creature. Edric and I grabbed hold just as the creature hit the water and plunged under the surface. I felt that pressure change when the wave roared over our heads. What kind of creature is this? I wondered, peering through the churning water. We went deeper, gliding beneath the waves where the water was dark and murky. I studied the creature as best I could, but it didn't make any sense. It had neither feathers nor wings, yet it flapped like a bird, its great wedge-shaped body smooth and black with a pair of curled horns, yet it had no head that I could see. There was no animal on dry land to compare it to, so I didn't know if we should be relieved at our rescue or terrified that this creature found us. "How are you doing?" the creature asked in a bubbly sort of voice. As I couldn't locate its face, I didn't know what part of the creature I should address. "Who are you?" I asked, my own voice sounding strange underwater. "They call me Manta. So what are you two? I've never seen fish like you before, and you don't have fur like seals." Edric laughed. "We're not fish, we're frogs, or at least we are now." "Frogs, huh?" said Manta. "I've never heard of frogs before. You must be rare." "Rare as enchanted royalty," said Edric, puffing himself up. "That's not rare. I wish I had a mouthful of plankton for every enchanted prince I've met. Speaking of plankton, you mind if I have a snack?" Manta rose toward the surface while unfurling his horns, which I realized weren't really horns at all, but a way to funnel cloudy water into what appeared to be his mouth. "You don't suppose he eats frogs, do you?" I whispered into Edric's eardrum. Edric peered ahead to where the cloudy water was disappearing at an amazing speed. "I doubt it. From the looks of things, I think he prefers soup." Another wave curled over our heads. I grabbed hold of the creature's smooth-skinned edge, grasping as he plunged into the heart of the wave. Flying beneath the violent surface, Manta's body rose and fell as his triangular wings propelled us through the water. His rhythmic movements were soothing and much more comfortable than the flying carpet. It would have been peaceful if it weren't for the muffled roar of the storm and the strange booms and wails that grew clearer as Manta dove. "What's that sound?" I asked. "Just the whales talking," Manta gurgled. "They say the storm is ending." After a while, the voices of the whales died away, replaced by a series of high-pitched chirps and whistles. "Is that another whale?" I asked. "It's a porpoise. Those guys are such comedians. They're always coming up with new jokes. Hey, have you heard this one? Why did the porpoise cross the ocean?" How would we know?" said Edric. "We've never met a porpoise." "You don't have to meet one. It's a joke. Come on, let's try again. Why did the porpoise cross the ocean?" "I don't know. Why?" "To get to the other tide." Edric grunted and made a face. "I'm sorry we don't understand your joke, Manta, but we're not familiar with the ocean. We've come a long way to find my grandmother. She's on an island here and needs our help." Manta dipped a wing and turned abruptly. "There's only one island around this part of the sea. I'll have you there in 3 shakes of a mermaid's tail. Hold on tight. I'm going up to look around." Flapping his wings in long, powerful strokes, Manta sped to the surface, shooting straight into the air, twisting before he fell. The sun had come out, and the clouds were disappearing on the horizon. Although the waves were still high, they looked nothing like they had only a short time before. An island stood off to our right. It was a beautiful place, with strange, frond-topped trees and a pure white shore. I caught a quick glimpse of huts and people in brightly colored clothes, but Manta flopped back into the water before I could see much more. Circling the island, Manta brought us close to shore at a lonely spot well past the huts. I plopped into the shallows beside Edric, who scrambled out of the water as quickly as he could. Holding onto Manta so the waves couldn't carry me away, I said, "Thank you for helping us, Manta. Most creatures wouldn't have bothered." "It was my pleasure," Manta replied, his edges rippling. "I love meeting new creatures, and you two are some of the strangest I've ever met."